AI is going to increasingly be a problem. Like, I'm sorry, but the right has to have an answer for this, or even the conservative youth, they say when you ask them, well, if AI takes away jobs, are we just going to have to go to universal basic income? And everybody says yes.
I have a good friend of mine. I won't say anything more than that, who works in the finance department of a large company, right, in the healthcare space. And he's kind of on his own island, but he hears things from everywhere. And so he was working on this and preparing financial reports, and it was grim. Things were not going well. And he prepares this report, sends it off to his boss, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, when he's in the meeting, it has been recast. And this phrase, which I've heard now echoed elsewhere, well, we're not doing well, but we are doing good, was sort of the way to spin it. The idea that the mission is not necessarily what it says on the tin, right? To be a XYZ company to service those sort of needs, but it's to kind of service this broader, ill-defined good, that is sort of, as you've said, completely and totally performative. And look, if that's one company, even if it's in a small market where it's important, if it goes away, something will replace it. But when that becomes every company all at once, you're sort of starting to look at this and you're saying, well, like, where does this go? Because you're creating this bizarre situation where you have this sort of untapped talent pool, people who are capable and competent, who are doing something. Now, they might not be doing something particularly productive. In fact, I think this is a large part of the reason you've seen the growth of like social media influencers, is that it is a way you can make money. It is a, rough meritocracy. And look, like, I realize the irony of making this point on, a podcast that I have, but like, that is individually rational. But then you have that person not doing something actually productive in the system that makes the world better, not producing something. Yeah. And so it's this brain drain. And that's even assuming it's something relatively innocuous. But you are both harvesting out, the sort of IQ and the sort of functionality out of existing institutions, pushing it to the outside and giving those people no direction. To me, that seems fundamentally unstable, even setting aside the sort of national concerns you mentioned earlier, which is other countries are not making this mistake.
Yeah, there's going to be a major competitive problem, 100%. And you're seeing it across all industries. Go no further than like what's going on at Disney with Marvel. You can literally chart the of Marvel movies, and it would track 1-to-1 with, and I'm not making it about race or age, but with getting rid of and pushing out objectively meritocracy, top of the heap people. They got rid of them. Now we have doors falling off Boeing planes, right? We have government that just is absolutely incapable of doing anything. Like even the military too, right? Nobody's been fired for that crisis in Afghanistan. How does that even happen? I think you'll just look at every industry everywhere, and there's a lack of integrity and objective decision-making. And not only that, it's like, okay, we've robbed people's agency because we have supported a system that concentrates power. So you can't open up a retail store. You're competing against Amazon because the government refuses to go after anti-competitive behavior with them. AI is going to increasingly be a problem. And like, I'm sorry, but the right has to have an answer for this, or even the conservative youth, they say when you ask them, well, if AI takes away jobs, are we just going to have to go to universal basic income? And everybody says yes. And I think even Elon is talking about that right now. And I think that's a horrible decision because of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How are people going to self-actualize if there's no tangible way to prove that through hard work you can achieve more? Are we just going to give up on that as humans? And if the answer is no, then the conservative movement has to understand that we need drastic, rapid, systematic reform. We need an independent government that's willing to go after these corporations. We need to have the ability to see like things that suck fail. And Donald Trump's not that person. He's gotten a lot of DMs from disaffected 3-time MAGA voters who are not Republicans, who are like burning their hats and 55-gallon drums out back. And one of them said, I thought Trump was going to be our Franco, but I guess I'm going to have to keep waiting. Because, for instance, the Chinese students, we have Chinese students like stealing bioweapons and sending IP back, and probably half of them are CCP agents. And they're propping up places like Brown University has a lot of Chinese, believe it or not, students on visa. And there's these Marxist organizations where conservatives are dying and not getting accepted. And it's just horrifying. Like literally everything has been broken and there's no systematic fix. And so when you have a situation like this that's untenable, again, a vacuum is going to get filled. And if it has to get bloody, that's probably where it's going to go. But we can't, the dollar is marching to financial ruin. And it's almost looking at Trump as like, like, we're in such a dangerous situation because he keeps pushing the Overton window right. The Overton window, your audience probably is familiar with the concept, but the left is good at systematically using like uniform talking points and non-government organizations and marketing to unify on a message. They have very powerful online hive minds in order to continuously move everything more left and radical. And the right doesn't have any counter manning forces. There's no equal and opposite push on the Overton window. Now, influencers and Twitter are kind of filling that void a little bit. And then Trump just posting random stuff on Truth Social. But when you push the Overton window right, and yet there's no political weight or backing to any of this, that creates an issue too, because these radical people are going to get increasingly desperate to prevent the sliding ubiquitously to the left. So Trump's out there tweeting about Hart-Celler. Like, that's a really big deal. His State Department is talking about the death of the West in Europe and the kinds of things that they said in that release that they came out. Like, these are things that matter and are going to make a really big deal when continuously people find that they can't vote for that in the Republican Party. And yet when you vote for the left now, it is going to be a vote for democratic socialism. They know that. Their political movement, even though it seems fragmented and it's full of really bad national political figures, they have piled in behind democratic socialism. There aren't really moderate Democrats anymore in the party, like in a meaningful way. They'll lose because they have a nice little system of carrots and sticks that reinforce people staying in line. And the Republican Party is still it's just anchored in this performative conservatism that's good for big business. And big business won. Like, this is the problem here. There's a corporate oligarchy that has captured the Democrat and the Republican Party. You call it corporatism, call it like neo-global homo corporatists. Like I don't even know the word for it, but it's perverse. And I think everybody fundamentally understands under 40.
So several things there. You mentioned Franco, and one of the stories you've sort of seen this pick its head up every 3 or 4 years is the idea that, and it's normally expressed in kind of breathless tone. It's like, younger people don't care about democracy. I can think of an example when, a teacher basically, polled the room of, 30 kids and said, would you prefer, and this is kind of funny to think about now, Hillary Clinton or, a right-wing dictator? Now, admittedly, right, some people are doing that to create a reaction, of course. But I think there was 1 or 2 exceptions who said, no, we'd prefer this kind of, baseline neoliberalism. So one, if you could you talk about, in the face of these dramatic challenges facing the nation and facing younger demographics, where do we look on, issues like democracy? Because I remember one of the things you brought up that I thought was interesting is the relatively high number of people who were all right with the idea of an AI dictatorship, for whatever that is. And so if you could you speak to that trend as well?
Yeah, let me try and pull some of this up while I'm talking. It's tough to pull on labels. For instance, conservatism. Like, what does that even mean right now? I would be hard pressed to define it. And the polling shows that younger voters behave outside of how they label themselves. So I asked these people, are you Republican? Are you Democrat? Are you conservative? And then when you ask them questions, like, you're getting responses that don't really make sense. And then when you ask questions about things like this, which political party is the biggest threat of dictatorship or tyranny coming from, Republican or Democrat Party? Well, you basically just get an exact even split, and it's like it's Mets versus Yankees. Well, my team's not going to do it. Your team is. So like there's those kind of trends that make it tough. But what illustrating these things with sort of like ridiculous, obtuse questions where you're like, oh man, people believe that, has been very powerful. And so again, so you have Doge being extremely powerful, popular with voters under 40. That was a big one. Then you have we asked everybody if you agreed or disagreed that he who saves his country violates no laws, and under 40s agreed with that most. I think it was 56 or 57%. It was almost like 3-1, I think. Then we've asked about arrests. Under 40 voters want arrests more than anybody. The AI question, and that was weird. It was the conservatives under 40. It wasn't the liberals at all. And the question was like, hey, AI is getting more advanced and people are frustrated that our government is less capable of making the decisions that we need or something like that. Would you support giving control of governance and legislative ability to an advanced AI? And it was 55-40 among under 40 conservatives. So pretty strong signal. And then you see things again like, and I think that this would be the same with democracy. Is it, okay, well, which is better, free market capitalism or socialism? And people say the right answer. They say free market capitalism. I think it would be like probably about 70-20, roughly, off the top of my head, with under 40s. But then it's like, okay, well, you take the Trump voter under 40 and you ask them, well, would you support or oppose nationalizing major industries like healthcare, tech, and energy? And like 3/4 of them, of Trump voters, say, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't we do that? Like, we should have done that yesterday. Would you support or oppose a program that confiscates excess wealth, like second houses and boats from older people to help first-time home buyers? It's like 50, I think that was 56% of Trump voters under 40. So these people are not, they don't act conservative. It doesn't even matter what they say or not. So when you hear these things like, oh, Gen Z is more conservative than any generation, like by what measure? They want you arrested. Like, that's conservative, I guess. Like, they're ready to. We had a Skynet question. We literally said, would you support giving control of the world's militaries to an advanced AI in order to reduce the number of people killed in war? And conservatives under 40, it was 49% to 41%. And of course, the liberals are like, no, like, you shouldn't do that. That's a bad idea. Maybe we shouldn't literally launch Skynet. And so I think there's this aspect of like, they want brutal reform and they want it yesterday. The arrests, ignoring the judges, impeaching the judges. Yeah. And they're not going to get it. And this was their best chance. And so my advice to Donald Trump was, like, this isn't enough. You can't do a mission accomplished and say that we fixed the economy when 50% of all retail sales is the top 10% of income earners. And people have to work 22 years to buy a house. And we give all our jobs to India. Like, what the system is, it doesn't work. It's like the most prescient thing ever written was apparently Atlas Shrugged, because we literally, Gen Z and millennials are basically Hank Rearden. Like, they're trying their best. They know the path. It's not just like they listen to the boomers dutifully. It's like no, like, this path's been laid out. I'm going to follow it because it's the right thing to do. I'm trying to support the social contract and not only provide for a family, but provide for the rest of the world, because that's what the American taxpayer does. The rest of the world's a freaking deadbeat, and we got to cut them off, because we're like, literally, I mean, like, it's going to get dark here. We got Western Europe that wants to build the Fourth Reich and get in a war with Russia. You have China that's going to be increasingly emboldened as its economy starts to fall apart and it needs to take drastic action. You have South America, who's probably been influencing so much of what we see behind the scenes, and now they have a naval flotilla surrounding them. Like, you have India, who's an ascendant economic force and essentially owns the engineering departments of every one of our Fortune 100 companies. Like, I look at this situation and I wonder what the path out is. But if we don't break from the path now, it's going to get really bad.